People's cat, how you doing? Brexit. Okay, so I did a couple of videos on Brexit, but I am a prepper. I'm Canadian. I've lived in Canada since 1989, and I'm still a British passport holder, but for how much longer I don't know. Anyhow, there's a lot of stuff going on about Brexit. Brexit's now been rescheduled. It's going to be Halloween, October 31st, 2019. Or will it? Nobody really knows. However, people in England and Wales and Scotland and Northern Ireland need to take it seriously, but not fall victim for what is ridiculous apocalyptic type scenarios which have no place in prepping or in Brexit. However, how do you prep if you're in England, Wales, Scotland or Northern Ireland right now, or the Isle of Man, and you don't know what to do about in terms of prepping? So you're going to go online, you can get all this advice, you can look at the newspapers, etc. and get some advice. All garbage, all nonsense. I've been watching what people are being told to do, and it really is... I'm going to tell you how to prep sanely for Brexit's actual potential issues if it's no deal, even if you don't have a servant. Because let's face it, most of us don't have servants, and the Queen is just the Queen. We're not the Queen. So how can you do it on a very limited budget without overextending yourself and without going crazy? Stay tuned. There's a cast of characters associated with Brexit, and let's be honest, I'm not even going to tell you who these people are. If you don't know who they are, you're one of the lucky ones. But let's face it, if you rely on the newspapers and you rely on people's opinions, it sounds really apocalyptic, or it sounds like nothing at all. The truth is, Brexit will not be apocalyptic, but there will be some effects, and you need to get ready for those effects. Firstly, this was the British Empire at its height, and this is the British Empire now. Commonwealth, I guess. So the ability to switch trading partners with free trade from Europe's 27 countries to the Commonwealth, to the Empire, is going to be very, very limited. So there will be some effects on trade. Trade will be reduced and some goods will be more expensive. But the question is, how do you figure out what will happen? In the early 1970s, Britain had a referendum that was binding and we joined the European Common Market, and that was cool. And we got to keep our pound because that seemed important to us, or why it is I don't know, and a whole bunch of other things. So basically what's going on now is Brexit has been engineered by a bunch of multi-millionaires to make sure that the European Union can't tax them with their offshore tax investments. That's pretty much the only reason for Brexit I can see that makes any rational sense. The rest of it is just a bunch of hooey. There isn't a huge amount of money going to the EU from Britain. In fact, if you look at Norway, Norway pays about 2/3 of the money that Britain currently does to the EU to actually be allowed to trade with Europe. And they have absolutely no input or say or control whatsoever with Europe. So Britain could well, with a no deal, end up in a Norway type situation, except it's highly likely the EU will punish Britain and not actually allow Britain anything favourable. And then Britain will have to rely on world trade. But how devastating will that be? So will Brexit deliver tricks or treats on Halloween? Truth is, it's going to do both. So I just want to give you a real quick update of some actual figures that actually make sense. First off, as you can see, international trade will not be adversely affected. The trade with the EU will not cease. The trade with the rest of the world will be unaltered initially. So there will be a reduction in trade, so there will be some less goods going into the United Kingdom and there will be some less goods going out. This will cause people to lose jobs. There won't be a massive effect from this, but there will be a partial effect. The amount of actual trade goods, not services, but goods, is actually not as significant as a lot of people have been putting it. A lot of what Britain produces is banking sector services, and they will be largely unaffected until such time as the banks decide in the concept of efficiency to actually move to Paris or Bonn, which they will. So this will end basically what is effectively free trade between the United Kingdom and Europe, 27 countries of the European Union. And that's going to have a bad effect. That's going to chill the global economy and probably put Germany, who's very exposed to this, and the United Kingdom, which is more exposed, into a probable economic recession that will last a period of time. Now, glass is half empty, half full. Brexiteers claim that that will make it great in the long run. People who don't believe in Brexit, think it'll make it bad in the long run. Truth is, it will have an economic effect that will hit your bottom line. The other issue here is migration. Now, migration is a touchy subject around the world. I live in Canada, and we have a population about half the size of Britain's. And we have an immigration rate at about half the size of Britain's. Immigration here has been pretty good. The main question we ask in Canada, most of us, is how can we change ourselves to help migrants integrate with our society. Whereas I think the United States and England to a large extent make no efforts to change their society with influx of immigrants from around the world and expect all of the change to be done by the migrants. Leaving that aside and the absolute furore spewed by your idiot press that's owned by multimillionaires that wants to make sure they don't get taxed by Europe, how do you actually look at immigration in a no-deal Brexit scenario? Well, the truth is you really need hospitality workers and healthcare workers from the EU to actually provide you with the goods and services that you expect as a modern nation, because your people won't or can't do it. And spontaneously you can't just train nurses that easily and that quickly. Now, part of that is what do you want to do? You know, is the NHS under attack? You'll hear all of that stuff. The truth is the NHS won't be under attack. It's probably going to lose a significant portion of its workers, so quality of care will plummet. All of these migration effects are going to happen slowly, probably. I can't see Boris deporting everybody, but you never know. But over time, people don't stay where they're not welcome. And you're already seeing a substantial drop in EU migration into the United Kingdom. Most of your migration into the United Kingdom, the same as most of the migration in Canada, is economic. People who have skills are brought in to do jobs that our own people are unable to provide. However, let's all focus on the crazy stuff, right? Because that stirs up emotion and we feel that we're under attack, and we forget the fact that they're the same as us, they're just a different person and they have a different language. So all of that stuff is emotional and it's driven to achieve an objective. The truth is it worked brilliantly. As you can see, the United Kingdom voted to leave the EU by a fractional margin. Actually it was England that voted to leave. Wales kind of sort of thought about it, and Scotland and Northern Ireland said no. So right from the beginning of the non-binding referendum, the United Kingdom was split, and any decent government would not have acted pro or anti-Brexit based upon that referendum, which was non-binding, given the circumstances and given the problems that lay ahead. However, that was ignored in the rush by the multimillionaires who control your press and your government to actually avoid paying tax on their offshore investments, because that's what the EU had decided to do, and that's why I believe Brexit became a thing, because it really wasn't a thing before 2015. So in my opinion, Brexit is not the apocalypse. It's not even an SHTF, and if you don't know what that stands for, look it up. It is going to be felt in multiple sectors of the United Kingdom and in Europe and probably around the world. However, Operation Yellowhammer, or whatever they called it, has found flaws and faults and possible problems due to a no-deal Brexit. And obviously, like Y2K, if people hadn't worked hard to address the Y2K problem with the computers in the year 2000, that might have been a much more significant event than it was. Brexit will be, a no-deal Brexit specifically, will be a severe event that you really should get prepared for. But you don't need a gun, and you don't need US Army rations or UK Army rations. You don't need to do a bunch of crazy things. Now unfortunately, there's money to be made in selling you products. There's money to be made in selling you safety. So there's books available, there's online sites, and I expect as you get closer to Halloween, this is going to become a massive industry to sell you safety from Brexit. But I don't think you need any of this. What do I think you need? Well, in the first two videos I did, I talked about a lot of stuff, and it costs money. But I was looking at it prepping for a very significant event. What you need for Brexit are to do the following things. Every time you go shopping from now on, you should buy extra tins of food that you normally eat. You should buy extra packets of rice and pasta that you normally eat. You should buy extra breakfast cereal that you normally eat. And you can buy £1 or £2 worth a week, or you can buy £5 or £10 worth a week. I think that's enough. I really do. The objective of this is to have your pantry and your kitchen expand. So instead of a lot of empty shelves full of sauce bowls that are almost empty, if you eat baked beans with sausages, you would have, by the time Brexit occurs at the end of October, you'd have 8 to 10 tins of those. That's about all you're going to need. I don't anticipate famine in the United Kingdom. I do anticipate that food will generally rise by about 12 to 15%, possibly overnight, possibly higher for some products. I do anticipate there'll be local shortages of fresh goods. There may be some shortages of other goods. These shortages will be geographically localized and will come and go. But let's face it, if you've got 4 or 5 tins of peanut butter or tins of Marmite in your cupboard, you've got enough for a long time. And that's the point. Make sure your food supply in your house is secure. Make sure there's enough food in the house so you can eat generally what you normally do most of the time anyway, and you can eat without ever going grocery shopping for a week or two. That's about it. That's all you're really going to need to do. The idea behind this is to prevent disruption to you. Now what do I mean by disruption? The ports, sea and air, and the Channel Tunnel, which is, I guess is land, are going to be very congested and confused. You don't have to be brilliant to point that out. So what you need to do is you'll need to go on vacation. Probably, especially if you live in the south of England, you need to go on vacation on about the 29th of October. Not on the 31st and not on the 30th. And then your vacation is a stay vacation. Stay at home. Get some books in. Watch the TV and giggle as all the pandemonium breaks out. Your plan is to spend a week to 2 weeks to 3 weeks, if you can afford it, not having to drive around, not having to deal with any of the complexities that might happen in the short term. Now that's another interesting issue. Gasoline. This is going to be a little pricey, and for some of you who live in apartments, not that easy. But you need to get a full tank of gas in containers now for Brexit. For example, our car here takes about 45 to 50 litres of gas. We have 2 20-litre gas containers. About every 6 months I pour that gasoline into the car, and then a couple of days later we go and refill those tanks. The reason behind that is because I'm a prepper. I want to be able to drive, if possible, to my bug out location if we go into a nuclear war scenario. The point for you doing it in Brexit is there may well be localised fuel outages in parts of England and Wales and possibly Scotland. There definitively might well be in the south of England. Now I think in Northern Ireland you'll probably be able to drive across the border and get gas. Hard border, whatever. I'm not sure they can put a hard border in place whether either side wants to or not. I don't know if the people of Northern Ireland and the people of Ayr are going to tolerate either of their governments sealing them off from each other ever again, and I hope they don't. Realistically speaking, they're going to try to make a hard border of some sort, but other than for goods and services, it's disgusting to even consider putting border controls between Northern Ireland and Ayr. I grew up through the Troubles. We do not want to go back to that under any circumstances, and our government has failed. You, the people, need to walk across those checkpoints and dare them to shoot you, if it comes to it. Time to stand up and be counted. You didn't want to exit the EU in Northern Ireland. The government in Westminster decided that you have to, for Conservative Party reasons more than anything else. Stand up for yourselves. But yeah, have some gas for the car so you can ride out some shortages, and you've got some issues with that. Basically be on vacation so you don't have to actually drive anywhere for a week or two. That's a good idea. Clearly, don't be abroad and don't try and go abroad and then come back during this first week of 2 weeks of Brexit. The ports are going to be a disaster zone. An absolute terrible disaster. I consider it highly unlikely you'll have power outages because of Brexit. Highly unlikely. But you might, who knows. So if you do, what you want to do is get yourself a torch. Flashlight to North Americans. I recommend you actually spend a little bit of money and get a solar powered flashlight. that can be hand cranked. It's going to cost you a little bit more money than a normal torch, but it's going to last forever. It'll last well after Brexit, right? And that's a good idea. The other thing you can get is something like this. I'm not recommending any of these products, by the way. Is a USB charger. Kind of useless to you if you've got a long-term power outages. Because I'm a prepper, I have solar panels that fit USB as an outlet. But, you know, something cheap that you don't need batteries for. Or get a couple of cheap torches and a bunch of cheap batteries. I think it's highly unlikely you'll suffer power outages. I do think it's highly likely that you won't ever need a product like this. This or a Sawyer brand water filtration system should not cost you a huge amount of money. It's good in a pinch. I don't think you need a camping stove. I don't think you need to do any of that stuff. You might want to consider that if you've got a bit of extra cash, or if you've got camping gear in the now, make sure you've got adequate fuel for it. If you use sterno, go and buy a couple of tins of extra sterno. If you use a propane one, get a few more tins of propane. Not 1,000 tins of propane, 1 or 2. Just have a little bit, so you can cook 4 or 5, maybe up to 10 meals max if you need to. But I don't think that's the priority here at all. The priority, as it is with all things prepping and all things in life, is your own health. And there, Brexit is seriously, seriously problematic. The reason being that certainly in the south east of the United Kingdom, a large percentage, a minority, but a large number of nurses and doctors and allied healthcare professionals are from the EU. They may well leave. What you will not see, as you have done, is a lot of them coming in. So yes, you can recruit from less developed countries like Uganda, and I'm not going to name any because I don't want to offend anybody. But remember, a lot of Brexit is because they didn't want immigration. So you're switching one type of person, Europeans, for another, non-Europeans, because you're not training and supporting your own staff in England. You're really not. Scotland sensibly has got control of its own healthcare system, and that's smart. So yeah, stock up on your medications you're on, and how to do that. 3 months is okay, 6 months is better. If you need to get more medications, you go to your doctor not on the 31st of October, but in September, and you ask for a 6-month refill on your prescriptions. And tell them it's because of Brexit, and demand that you get them. And don't leave that office till they write you a 6-month prescription. Unless you're on opioids or things like that, in which case, yeah, you're not going to get them. But for generally speaking, for your cardiac meds, your heart meds, your kidney meds, there's no reason why they can't give you a 3 to 6 month supply. Get it in September. That covers you up to past Christmas, right? Things will be sorted out by then. The medication supply chain may take a hit. Some medications might not arrive. They may have to ration some medications for a period of a few days to a few weeks. Doesn't matter for you. You've prepped for Brexit. You have your emergency medications already in your home. Okay? It's fairly straightforward. I don't think there's too much problems with that. Now, that's basically what I think you're going to see from Brexit. What I would say is, for those people out there that are hoping the government will save them, I don't think there's any chance whatsoever that the government will save you from this mess. I consider it impossible. The only good Brexit is no Brexit at this point. There was not a clear majority of people in the United Kingdom who wished to leave the EU. Going on and on about 52% of the people who actually voted wanted to leave on a non-binding referendum. Remember, it was non-binding. You're more likely to vote anti if you don't think it's going to stick. And it was a protest vote. And obviously most people in the United Kingdom now do not want to leave the EU. So I think the only way out of this is the government to actually cancel Article 51 and rejoin the EU and become a full partner. An aggressive full partner. And that requires a few things. It requires people to stop voting in jokers and right-wing rich bully boys who like going on about Germany in the Second World War. It's not relevant. England needs to be part of the United Kingdom. Great Britain needs to be part of Europe. Now the government's not going to save you from that. So I do think you're going to come crashing out. And I do think there'll be a period of time, and I do think you'll end up rejoining. And you'll lose the pound at that point. And I think you're on a long journey for this. So I don't think it's apocalyptic. I do think it's going to be a real sea change. A major sea change when I was a kid was when we joined the European Union, and nobody was really that keen on it, but they kind of sold it to us and we went along with it, and we weren't that comfortable being part of Europe. But you know what? British economy, especially the southeastern economy, did so well out of that. And it's kind of crazy that all of those people who are kind of old want to go back to that, and a lot of the people who aren't that old really don't want to leave it. And I'll be sad to cash in my British passport, but I will. The only use of it to me, realistically speaking, is free travel throughout Europe, and that's why I kept it. I won't be the only one. I have money in my British bank account, and I've told people online this, and they always say the same thing: good riddance to you. Yeah, good riddance to me. I'll be taking out probably about £40,000, and I'll take it out of Britain once the pound stabilises, because it will. It won't crash and burn. It'll drop a bit, but it will start to regain. But once it regains, I don't really need that money in Britain, and I'm going to move it out. It's handy to have that money there when I'm travelling in Europe or when I'm visiting Britain. But realistically speaking, I and a lot of people like me who were born and raised and actually quite loyal to Britain will probably do the same thing. You've elected to become an independent, separatist, isolationist country in an increasingly complex and integrated world. By doing that, you've decided not to talk to your European partners on equal footing. This will have repercussions that will go beyond our own lifetimes. But it is not the apocalypse. You don't need to be spending vast quantities of money buying British Army rations and special knives and solar panels and everything else that people are going to try and sell you. Dehydrated meals. Don't buy dehydrated meals. You know those little plastic packs of rice and beans you get in the supermarket? Buy them. They work just fine and are a lot cheaper. But buy stuff you're going to use up anyway. Why waste your money buying stuff for something that you'll probably never need? If you want to do that, then look at my other videos. I'm a prepper. I prep for things like nuclear war and about climate change. But Brexit is neither of those things. So keep calm, stay focused. Don't read these newspapers so much. Stop buying them, please. Your newspapers have rotted your intellectual capacity to vote sanely in the United Kingdom, in my opinion. However, I would also point out to you that the TV stations are doing the same job, and it's the same in Canada and America. But that's a whole different video. So remember, in Brexit, if you don't prepare today, tomorrow might be worse than today. Toodles.